Okay, good evening, everybody. Uh, Waski Indigenous Pishutotem. My name is Jeff Horvath, and um, my, I'm a University of Calgary graduate from 1999. Um, I'm actually a current doctoral student right now in my seventh year of doctoral studies. When they said it's a challenge, it's a bit of a slog. So here's to finishing up this year. I'm also the principal of Sotina First Nations High School. We opened a new school called Mini Horses High School, and just figuring out the challenges of opening a school during a global pandemic. It's been an exciting week, but not as exciting as tonight because we have a very interesting topic: Indigenous inclusivity in athletics here at the University of Calgary. And for your viewing pleasure, right after is the Trump-Biden debate, which will also be as equally entertaining as tonight, I'm sure. Tonight's topic is really important. Athletics in terms of human existence is an important part of it. My background as an educator, I work with First Nations youth, Indigenous youth, and the goal is to ignite a passion in young people for them to have a good life. And athletics is one of the areas that we can achieve that. And so it is an important topic. I mean, there's many other areas, whether it's the arts, whether it's land-based education, whether it's culture. All these are important components in being a human being. And so tonight we have a great panel on our Zoom call here, because especially in these times of physical distancing and virtual connections, I like to think about who I'm sharing the space with now, both in the air and far. We are broadcasting from Calgary. Well, this is being based in Calgary. I'm actually in Canmore, that's where I live right now, which is located on the traditional territories of the people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta, which includes the Blackfoot Confederacy, comprising of the Siksika, the Piikani, and the Kainai First Nations, as well as the Tsuut'ina, who are currently my employer, and also the Stoney Nakoda First Nations, which include the Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wesley First Nations, who I used to also work for. I've worked around. I've been around the area. Also, the knowledge that the City of Calgary is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. I have not worked for them yet. The University of Calgary is situated on land adjacent to where the Bow River meets the Elbow River, and that the traditional Blackfoot name of this place is Mokintis. Mokintis, I should know this. I'm there, which we now call the City of Calgary. So, miigwech, Ishnish, Shiaskas, thank you for joining us today, the second edition of our Dino Diversity series presented by ATB Financial, where we will be discussing Indigenous inclusivity within athletics. So this is just one of more than 25 virtual programs being held throughout the month of September for Alumni Month. Our alumni's passion, vision, and involvement in the community here and around the world elevate University of Calgary's reputation as a global leader and change maker. In celebration of our 190,000 strong U Calgary alumni community, we have curated an exciting selection of programs featuring alumni who will inspire you, conversations that will inform you, and the expertise that will guide you. I encourage everyone to check out the entire Alumni Month schedule at the alumni.ucalgary.ca/alumni-month. We'll get that again to you later at the ending. So we have a great panel today, joining us today, and all of us are either current Dino student athletes or alumni of our varsity programs. I'll let our panelists introduce themselves. And I know what you're saying, like, how is this guy not a varsity level athlete? Well, I was at one time, but now you can't really tell. But I'm just full of dad bod. I slowed down, got a little older, but also still involved in sports and athletics. So, I'd just like to let our panelists introduce themselves, starting with Trishelle. Trishelle, would you be able to introduce yourself?
And, there you go. Great. So hi, my name is Trishelle Bunn, and I'm a proud Dakota Sioux woman with traditional ties to Birdtail Sioux Dakota Nation. I'm a second-year defenseman with the women's hockey team. I'm majoring in law and society with a minor in Indigenous studies. In the future, I aspire to attend law school and become a lawyer advocating for my fellow Indigenous people while working to combat the injustices Indigenous people have faced within the past and currently face. Sports, specifically hockey, has made a very positive impact in my life. It has quite literally led me to where I am today here at U of C. I am forever grateful for my family's support through my athletic journey and for the opportunity to be a Dino. This evening, I'll be sharing with you my perspective on Indigenous inclusivity in sports. I'll be approaching this topic by focusing on the importance of Indigenous awareness and knowledge for individuals within athletics and our community here at U of C. I'll be building off my past experiences in which I was the only Indigenous person on a team in a classroom where just occupying a space, and using this as a way to support how crucial Indigenous awareness and education is in order to achieve this inclusivity.
Miigwech, thank you, Michelle. We'll move on to our next guest, which will be, I believe, Riley.
Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Riley Manybears. I am a proud member of the Siksika Nation, which is part of the Blackfoot Confederacy, also Treaty 7, and part of Mohkinstsis, Calgary. And so a little bit...
That was good.
Yeah, Mohkinstsis, yeah. So I'm 100% Blackfoot. So a little bit about myself. I'm a World Indigenous Games gold medalist and a bronze medalist, and particular sports is my long distance. And so I would say I grew up in a very dysfunctional environment, drugs and alcohol. It's very common in First Nation communities, but I haven't attended school. I was supposed to, but some stuff happened. I know that I accepted a full ride scholarship down in Oklahoma, but things didn't go according to plan. So I've been living overseas in Kenya, doing some high altitude training, living there for some parts of the year. And over the past couple of years, I've been honored to become an ambassador for Ever Active Schools, Spirit North, and just recently the Indigenous Sport Council of Alberta, alongside some amazing ambassadors such as Ashley Cullenbull, Wacy Rabbit, and Strader Crowfoot. And yeah, that's just a little bit about myself. So
awesome, Miigwech, thank you. Our third panelist is Sienna Prince McPherson, Dinos Women's Soccer.
Oh, hi.
Oh, there you are. Perfect.
Yeah, I'm Sienna. My family's from Peguis First Nation in Manitoba, which is home of the Anishinaabe and Cree people. But I've lived here my whole life. My mom's parents, my grandparents, moved here when she was very young, because my grandpa got a job out here. So, and I think they just wanted that opportunity. So yeah, that's why I live here. Yeah, I've played sports since I was like really young. My mom has always thought that it was really important for kids, just because of like the positive outlet that it has, the social impacts that it has on kids, and I think the values that are learned in sports is like really important, especially from a young age. So yeah, I've always played like sports throughout junior high. Like I tried volleyball, basketball, cross country, wrestling, but I've always kind of stuck with soccer. In high school, I continued to play basketball and soccer, and I enjoyed basketball so much. I joined a club team. And then my first year of university, I went to the University of Montana to play soccer. And then I came back after my first year and decided I still wanted to continue playing soccer. So yeah, I joined the UFC Dinos team, and I'm in my 5th and final year of university. I'm in the education program. And yeah, I think that's all.
That's great, guys. Thank you, Sienna. This evening, we're just going to be kind of having some questions. We'll also be, there's a box at the bottom of on the Zoom panel for questions from the audience, all the participants in tonight's discussion. So we'll try and get through those at the second half of tonight's event. So we have some questions regarding our topic from our speakers tonight. I think my first question will go to all three of you, and maybe I'll jump in at some point. But Trishelle, you've often been the only Indigenous person on a team, and in many other situations. And I can relate to that. What was that like? And something I'd like you to maybe talk about would be, how can organizations, teammates, coaches create inclusive spaces for Indigenous people? Could you carry on with that, Trishelle? I think you're on mute still. There we go.
There you go. Growing up, it was tough at first, but it was something that I almost became accustomed to, something I became prepared for and just became used to. And many times in these instances in which I was the only Indigenous person in a space, is when I would find that unfortunately I would experience hardships like racism and discrimination. But that's not something I want to focus on today. Those situations are not something I want to give the power to, but these occurrences have definitely drove me to work towards creating inclusive spaces, not only for myself, but for others. And by just being prepared and anticipating these situations to happen, at one point in my life, I almost felt as if I was preparing myself and readying myself to feel excluded and to feel uncomfortable. And I think that's really when I found my voice and asked myself, what can I do to make sure I don't have to feel like this? And what can I do to make sure that others don't have to feel like this? I got to the point where I just stopped depending on others to make spaces inclusive to me. And I began to take on the role to create them for myself and to create it for others. And this is something I take great pride in. But unfortunately, I understand that it's not a role that every Indigenous person wants or is able to take on or should even have to take on. And that's why I believe that education is vital to achieving this inclusivity. As for what others can do to create inclusive spaces for Indigenous peoples, I feel that the biggest thing that can be done is to be open to learning and being willing to have these tough conversations. I feel that when spaces do feel exclusive and when hurtful or offensive comments are made, a lot of the time it is done due to a lack of education. There are instances in which words and actions are done solely out of hate, and we can't take away from those. But speaking on my personal experiences, when I have occupied a space and I felt excluded, it was due to one, being uneducated on Indigenous culture, history, practices, and beliefs. Personally, something I would love to see in the future done would be to have a completion of Indigenous knowledge training for students and athletes upon enrollment and upon becoming a part of a Dino sports team. And overall, I feel like this relates to my overall goal for the future, is that one day we won't be having to have this conversation. We won't be having to ask, how can we make others feel included in a space and in every space? It won't need to be up for discussion. But until then, we need to keep having discussions like this, and we need to keep working towards that one day. And I feel like this Dinos Diversity Series is amazing. Conversations like this that foster the awareness and the discussion are crucial in the process of achieving inclusivity for all. So thank you, Kadamia.
Tricia, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Wampum, Manitoba.
Wampum, Manitoba.
Yeah.
Did you do your high school out there as well?
Actually, it's a border town in the southeast corner of Manitoba. So up until grade 8, I attended school in Manitoba, in Sprague, Manitoba. And then in 8th grade, I went to school in Warroad, Minnesota. So my town is a border town, so I'm only about 10 to 20 minutes away from Minnesota. So I went to Warroad High School and graduated from there.
Okay, I know that area too because
Yeah.
I'm originally from Lake of the Woods, or my family is from Lake of the Woods in Ontario. So I have my auntie lives in Warroad.
Oh,
And,
nice.
And TJ Oshie
Yeah.
from where I think I'm not name dropping, but kinda. He's kind of a second cousin. My mom.
Oh, wow.
My mom is cousin with Jimmy Oshie, and he's related to TJ. So that's something interesting. I know you play hockey, and this is your competitive sport, and you're at a high level of sport. Just to kind of add on to that, like the highest profile Indigenous athletes, I think, could be argued would be from hockey. Whether I catch myself cheering for Carey Price, even though it's the Habs.
Yeah.
The Habs. But I even bought my son a jersey, and some of the main like I again also cheered for Edmonton with our Mr. Bear. You see Ethan Bear?
Ethan Bear, yeah.
Exactly. I mean, he's the popular jersey. I mean, these are some high profile athletes that are I think it's so important for us to have those role models, and we really cling to that. And do you find that as well, that you seek out the Indigenous athletes and really root for them? Do you find that in your personal life?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely do that. Big role model for me would be Bridget Lequette.
Yeah.
On
Sure.
the women's national team. She's definitely someone who's paved the way for young Indigenous females in the sport of hockey, and the work that she does is amazing. So I definitely relate to that.
Perfect. That's great. Sienna, what about you? Growing, I know you grew up in Calgary. Have you found yourself being the only Indigenous person on some of your teams or classes or schools? Where did you go to high school? Oh, I think we're on mute still. Great.
So yeah, I went to high school at St. Mary's, like downtown Calgary. So yeah, that was kind of what I wanted to talk about today, was like there wasn't really many role models, Indigenous role models that I had, and I think doing more stuff like this really exposes more Indigenous athletes who we may not know about, and then just show that to the youth in our communities and kind of inspire them and encourage them to like do the same thing that we're able to do, and kind of encourage and support and create that inclusive environment for the youth in our communities.
For sure. How was that experience for you? Like on your soccer team, were you one of the only few Indigenous players?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I didn't really come across anyone else who was Indigenous in soccer. So yeah, it was, I don't know. I guess some people asked me a lot of questions in my youth experience that some of the questions were just like, I don't know, to me it was like kind of unbelievable that someone would like ask me things like that.
Did you get the TP question?
I got something like that, yeah.
Okay. And we don't live in teepees, just to state that. I mean, some do actually. I mean, not still, but teepee is a very important part of many of our cultures. At our school, we have one, so it's not too out of the way. But Riley, what about you? But you grew up in Siksika, is that correct? Is there mute? There we are, Riley. Can you hear me? It's still on mute. Hold on. Oh, there you are, Riley. We got you here. Perfect.
Oh yeah, you're gonna have to like unmute me. I don't know But anyways, so yeah, I grew up on a First Nations called Siksika, second largest reservation in Canada, so 1 hour east of Calgary. And so like I mentioned before in my introductions, I grew up in a very dysfunctional environment, experienced poverty, me and my three younger siblings, and like I'm an orphan. And so how I got introduced to long distance running was just pretty much like just enjoying the outdoors, just playing a bunch of like all these tag games, kick the can, and just pretty much like enjoying where my ancestors were before me and all that. But in our as First Nations people, Indigenous people, like running is pretty much like our culture. Back in the olden days, they had messengers, and believe it or not, that one of my ancestors is the legendary runner Deerfoot. And so which is, of course, he's a legendary I would say the actual professional Canadian athlete. Well, at the time, it was just called, we wouldn't consider Turtle Island, I should say. But and then of course I got introduced to track and field in grade 5 from my grade 5 teacher, and I didn't really take the sport serious until like after that, in my senior year of high school. And of course, I myself was into that negative environment for a couple of years, and until I pretty much got saved by athletics, by sports. It's just something about sports you could really relate, and it's a lifesaver. And so this, I made of course I was going to attempt suicide because I grew up a lot of teen suicide. I lost so many close family members, cousins, just to teen suicide, ages like 14 to 16 years old. And so I didn't really have a good teenage lifestyle, but and then I kind of see the Q&A questions is who were your role models? And my role model is, for some of you don't know, some of you do know, his name is Billy Mills, and he's a Native American who, this is like way back, but he's Native American. He's from the Oglala Lakota Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota. And so, he was an underdog runner, and then, he competed at the 1964 Tokyo Olympics, and he won a gold medal in the men's 10,000 meter. And still to this day, he's the only person in the Western Hemisphere to have that gold medal. And so that was my role model, maybe from when I was 18 and up. And none of that, but I have this amazing relationship, and I'm proud that he accepted me as my adopted grandson, and as he's my adopted grandfather as well. And so, and then, it's amazing where sports can take you, but behind that, the destination is the journey. Yeah. Well, I've been blessed with strong brothers and sisters, very caring family and friends, and yeah.
For sure. So that hero of yours, the role model, where you have a relationship?
Yeah, like I have a
still, or was what was the?
Pardon?
Sorry, just wondering about that relationship you had with that the man you were talking about.
Mills? Yeah, it was kind of crazy because I was kind of going through a lot, depression, and of course I was gonna plan to attempt suicide, but when I heard his presentation about 2014, so about 6 years ago, down in Portland, Oregon, at the, I forgot what annual Nike and 7 Sports Summit it was, but I attended it. And just hearing his presentation, I could really relate to him so much. Of course, he experienced racism and in college, but also in athletics too. But being a minority of the USA, and just they didn't allow Indians to be in fraternities and all this, and so he attempted suicide because of that. He was about to, but what of course what really saved him was a dream, a dream to heal a broken soul. And so I just pretty much related to that story. And then not only that, but all these amazing guests I met over the years, like Bridget Laquette, I have amazing friendship with her, and all these amazing other Indigenous athletes who are inspired the next generation. So
for sure. That's and we have to talk about the reality of life being a First Nations person in Canada, and to many of our viewers tonight. I always try and give these presentations, and especially with my mother, about there are reasons why things are the way they are, and Canada as a nation is starting on that journey as to why, how, and where do we go from here. And as again I mentioned earlier, athletics and sport is one avenue that can help promote healing. And when you read the headlines in this country, there's a lot of tough situations, and like I said, there's reasons why that is, and Canadians are starting to realize some of these reasons. I mean, the loss of our many generations through residential schools across the country has severely hurt our families and our culture and our language. One professor I had talked about the official government policy was to kill the Indian in the child through the residential school system. That was the intent. And one professor, I think, who talked to an elder, talked about saying what ended up happening was the child was killed in the Indian through the residential school system. And so we have a cycle of trauma in our families that has continued on for generations. And by no means many of us come from healthy families, but many of us have had many of the challenges of poverty, addiction, violence, and institutionalized racism. And these are some hard truths for all of us to acknowledge and face. But it's important to do that, because for us to heal, we have to take those steps. And so that's why tonight's an important night, because an important topic, because I think all of us on the panel are on a healing journey. I think my mom is actually on tonight's call. I don't know how you figured out Zoom, Mom. If you're out there, I'm really proud of you. If you're out there, but we were managed to get through that, and then that's another factor is education. I mean, the fact that we're at the University of Calgary, and Riley, anytime you want to come join us, let's get you up here. But if you're interested at all at the University of Calgary, it's really helped us and saved our families. So I look at my own family, that it was my mother started her healing journey, and I started my healing journey as a young man too, to break the cycles that was in our family, from Lake of the Woods and in War Road and all that area. But I'm a father now, and I have two children. My son is 13 and my daughter is 15, and both are in athletics. My daughter's a competitive cross-country skier with Canmore Nordic Center here in Canmore, and she races throughout the winter. And my son plays competitive hockey also in Canmore, where I don't know about many of my experiences. Rural hockey is a tough go for hockey dads, because so I'm on the road every weekend for 2.5 hour drive for 60 minutes of hockey, and then a 2.5 hour drive back from. I find myself in like Drumheller, Alberta to Brooks. It's long roads, and I'm sure, Trishelle, you probably have done those long trips as a young hockey player in rural northern Minnesota. But that's something important that we have to talk about, and I guess what my question to the panel would be, how can the promotion of Indigenous athletes and education on Indigenous history lead to increased sport participation within Indigenous communities? What are some of the values that sports brings to community? Sienna, maybe you could take that question about the value of sport and what it brings to the community.
Yeah, for sure. So I definitely think that it brings the value of like hard work and determination, and it brings the value of like togetherness and support in your community, and it provides that positive outlet for the youth especially, and it provides somewhere for them to go to. And yeah, I just think it brings like the community together, and it enables them to encourage and support their athletes and encourage them to continue with their passion for sports and continue on their like a positive life path, whether that's like education or whatever that is for them.
For sure. Like I think of, I can, I'll use my example, community Canmore, where I live right now. It's not, I love living here. It's not the most diverse community in Canada by far. But you go down to the hockey rink on the weekends, and that's where you have many Stoney Nakota families that complete. They have their children and grandchildren in the Canmore Eagles sports club, hockey club, and that's where you see Indigenous and non-Indigenous people and families gathering, and it is beautiful. I mean, it is where we can connect, and so the value of sport, especially in this town, is valuable. I know. Again, I mean, I'm not trying to. I'll talk only about hockey, Trishelle. I know, but I do see the popularity of that for Indigenous people, and what Riley was talking about with the sacredness of running. What a beautiful way to express it. Running is sacred, and again, it's hard to believe, but I became a runner. When I first met my wife 19 years ago, I was a smoker, and she was a marathon runner, and I thought I better do something to try and keep her, and so I quit smoking and tried to become a runner. I mean, I'm not fast, but I know I look it, but not really. But I still enjoy that. And Riley, again, I mean, you talked about the sacredness of running and how it heals the spirit and how it can, save lives. I mean, in a way, you said it saved your life. At school right now, we're trying to start a running club, and I know Riley from my work at Sotina as the principal, and I'm also on the board of Spirit North. Spirit North is an organization created by Olympian Becky Scott, Canada's, I think, one of our favorite Olympic athletes. She also lives in Canmore, and actually her son is upstairs right now playing Fortnite. They're supposed to be studying, but I think they're upstairs. But she created an organization called Spirit North, and that brings cross-country skiing and other programs that have expanded to physical wellness for Indigenous youth. And so I've been on the board for them for a year, and that's how I met Riley. Riley has been working with Spirit North and gives these inspirational talks to our students who need those role models. And so Riley has been a big supporter of this organization and a big supporter of Indigenous youth. So Riley, again, for our work with youth, can you talk about how sport and education can help us and help us heal?
Yeah, so like myself, for my employment, I'm actually a youth worker at Six Hour Services under the SM7 program. So basically, it's a youth program run by youth, and not only we focus on the sport aspect, but we focus on the medicine wheel aspect. We think of education, culture, academics, sports, and all that, and we pretty much tie that in with our field of work. And so we have a group of some kids who are either a post-secondary institute or just like taking a year off just to upgrade or two. And so the thing is, we like to focus on all those aspects, like I said, but just like working with youth, and of course, like the reality of living on a First Nations reserve. It's not all sunshines and rainbows. Of course, many of us, like I'm a third generation residential school survivor. My grandparents went to residential school, and of course they experienced sexual, physical, verbal abuse, and all these other negative experiences they had in their at their school, their experiences with school. And so we, like, my job is just to inspire as much youth as I can. Like I mentioned before, like I spoke out in Satina school a few times, and this is about seeing all these kids, just being around them. You just feel their energy. And then like I mentioned, growing up, I didn't have any role models. It was all like about, like some of my older cousins were, doing drugs, smoking pot, drinking at the, just 14, 15 years old. And it's just that negative activity and lifestyle I didn't want to become. And so my only role models growing up was, these fictional characters, all these, like some anime characters. I know that I'm a huge nerd geek and all this pop culture stuff, like I looked up to these characters, my role models. And of course, and then once I got into that negative activity lifestyle, I told myself, like, oh, I'm the person that I didn't want to become. And so, and then I just decided to, quit drugs and alcohol, because it's pretty much pulling me away from my long-term athletic goals and academic goals as well. And so, I made a vow, not only that but also to myself and my younger siblings, because they were kind of sick and tired of seeing me living a nice, negative lifestyle. And just like, of course, I was very having suicidal thoughts because my dad's passing and all my other cousins passing and so on. And so my biggest accomplishment in my life is being a drug and alcohol-free Indigenous youth, because the way the media portrays us, they say that all these negative comments, saying that we're deadbeats, lowlifes, and I kind of break that stereotype barrier. And so, I'm proud to say that my 5-year sobriety is coming up, same as drugs too. And so but it's just being around, inspiring the next generation. So it's just like a domino effect. They inspire the next set of youth, and so that's just my my comment towards that.
For sure, Miigwech, thank you, Trishelle. In what do you have feel like a sense of obligation to work with youth, with hockey being such an important part of who you are and your journey? Being a role model is sometimes some pressure, and people don't really are comfortable with that. But how do you feel about working with youth, or plans on working with youth, or even peers on how to improve I guess the situation?
Being a role model is not, I don't think, something I ever really planned on doing. But I guess it just comes with it, like how you touched on earlier, like when we see Indigenous athletes like Carey Price, Ethan Bear, Bridget Lequette, like the Indigenous community so fully backs them and gets behind them, and you become a role model without even knowing you are one. And I think I take great pride in that, and just living every day the way I am, and just hoping that I can inspire others, that the road is not always easy, but it's possible.
Yeah, I think that's really valuable. I mean, I think I don't know if those students I work with would ever consider me a role model. But what I like to show is that I can be a happy, healthy First Nations person, and I worked hard to be where I am. I've had a lot of support, but I'm really happy. I love my children and my wife and my life in Canmore, and I try to be open and honest with all the students and young people that I work with. That wasn't easy. I mean, a lot of us have pretty difficult journeys in getting to where we are. It hasn't been easy, and I hope that young people can see that, and especially with you young people, as the old guy out here, you serve as that inspiration. You are the young people. Sienna, when I found out you went to Montana on a scholarship, I was so proud. I mean, I should maybe we should let people know that your mom is one of my teachers at school. So she's not my teacher, but she works with me as a teacher at my school. And I've known her since university back in 1995. And we both did, well, she passed the astronomy course we were in. I think I barely passed. I got my science requirement. But so I know your family for a long time, and to know that you did such great things, it's an inspiration. And like I said, Riley, you've been at the school. Trishelle, you're coming to the school this year, right? We'll have you over, and we'd love to have you. We're starting a hockey academy at Sotina at Many Horses High School. So I'm going to try and get you out there on the ice with us. Perfect.
I love that. That'd be great.
Okay, that sounds good. Hey, I got some. We'd like to get to some questions as we time flies. It's 6:15 here. We have one of the attendees that has asked a question for Sienna. Do you suggest that inclusivity directly corresponds with the number of people around you who share your Indigenous group identity?
Yeah, I think there definitely is like a correlation there, and I think once we create these like inclusive space and safe environments, and like doing things like this to promote Indigenous athletes for our youth to see, I think that really encourages them to do the same thing and reach for their goals and continue with their passion for sports or whatever it is that they're passionate about. But for us, like, we can have that influence on them if we keep doing things like this, keep having these conversations, because I think just providing like educational outlets helps the whole like sports organizations and just everyone in that organization to be more like understanding and more inclusive. And I think once our youth in our communities know that, then they won't be afraid, or they won't think, oh, there's no one like me out there, or I don't know if I can do this. Or so I think, yeah, it does correspond to the number of Indigenous athletes out there, and an inclusive environment, definitely.
Yeah, for sure. Inclusivity, it's an interesting topic, because it seems like, today I can only speak from my experiences with my own life and my children's life, but we've come a long way in Canada from my mother's generation, who would walk through the town of Kenora and have people throw rocks at her and spit at them. To my children's experience now, where we gave them Ojibwe names. My children. My daughter's name is Nashki Asagig, and how you spell that, just for your own personal enjoyment, is Naashkiyaasagek, and her middle name is Rose, and my boy is Sagate. Both have been gifted. My mother's name is Nashki Asagig. We call her Nashki, but her existence now has been welcomed. We on her ski team, she's she does get those questions about some of the stereotypes, some of the misconceptions that's caused by often in the media or in society in general. There was a question to Riley about the use of deadbeats by the media. Maybe it hasn't been in the media since, but in recent times. But something I need Canadians to know is that CBC does not let anybody comment on any story involving Indigenous people anymore for the last few years, because the racism on those threads was so rampant that they had to cut that off. So maybe it's not direct related to the media, but we have to acknowledge that racism is quite prevalent in Canada. And racism, again, comes from misconceptions, stereotype, and ignorance. And so creating these inclusive spaces, I think we've come a long way, and it's important. My son plays hockey. He has a super long braid. He is, I'm thinning, but I still have my long hair. And so he has a super long hair and wears it in a very beautiful braid. And part of hockey is full of traditions. Trishelle can tell you these kind of superstitions. If he has his hair tucked in his shirt, I tap on the glass to make sure he pulls it out, because I really believe that that's an important part of his spirit. But what happens sometimes, I've often heard in the crowds where he's a pretty good hockey player, and I've heard people in the audience from opposite team go, "Wow, that girl is fast," and he's got delicate features like me, but he gets that. So again, we haven't had any negative experiences, in our time here. But there have been across the country, and it could be on. I was reading a news story today on CBC, and First Nation teams can get racial taunts thrown at them when they're visiting in competition, and kids had to be escorted from angry families in different arenas across the country. So, those kind of things are hard to hear, and they are real. So we have to acknowledge them, and the negative stereotypes are out there, and they hurt us all, and but we have to strive for that. Sorry, folks, I still like to get some of the questions. Here's one from Maureen. Do you think that movies such as Indian Horse and the Grizzlies that feature Indigenous persons succeeding at being and being positively affected by participating in sports are realistic and helpful? Does anybody want to answer that question? I haven't seen the Grizzlies. I've been saving it. I really want to see that. But Indian Horse, the story by Richard Wagamese, a beautiful film. Trishelle, do you have a feeling about these media portrayals of Indigenous people and the healing power of sport?
Yeah, I feel like they're very important. I mean, growing up in school and history and social studies classes, you learn about the oppression and residential schools and all the hardships that Indigenous people have faced. So you hear those stories over and over, and times people have faced racism and the struggles that Indigenous peoples go through. So I think it's so important, especially for youth, to hear Indigenous stories of triumph and to see movies where Indigenous people are succeeding and overcoming the struggles, rather than just focusing constantly on teaching our youth these are the struggles that we face, and rather than putting more focus on overcoming them, and how Indigenous children can go to the movies and see the story play out on a movie screen and use that as motivation that we face struggles but we can overcome them.
I think
for sure. And it's very important for us to realize too that there's so many beautiful stories out there, and the healing process has begun, and we're in a kind of renaissance in Indigenous people, whether it's athletics, whether it's sports, arts, literature, all these areas where we are able to thrive and show our true potential, and so it is a good time now for us to be active and well on our healing journeys and contributing back, and with all the audience who are participating in tonight's conversation, we're really thankful for that, because there was an interest in you to join us and to hear our stories, and we really value that. So I don't have the number of how many people are out, but we appreciate that. So thank you so much for sharing that interest. Let's see. So can the panel share any specific ideas on how we might be able to increase sport participation rates across the Indigenous communities? Riley, what about getting more participants in sport? Do you have any strategies or plans to try and do that?
Well, first and foremost is that coming from a Indigenous perspective, I know the other two panelists, and they could probably relate, is you got to feel very welcome to the group. And so, like myself, I actually was on the club team for a bit, and I was the only Indigenous person on there, and I kind of felt like like I was just basically like alone. I barely communicated with one another, but it's just like it's just like creating that. I'm quoting from Dr. Reg Croshu, is that, creating that ethical space, I should say. And so, you got to feel very welcomed, and none of that, but just like be a very caring individual, I say. If he's, of course, with what's going on with the world right now, it's crazy, especially with all these movements that's happening. And I'm not going to get touch base. I'm not going to go in that direction. But anyways, and so I would say just, like go in there, but you have a goal. I know you have to, like, deal with it, trying to reach your goal, but I'm sure you'll need some. I know, like, people are having a better understanding. And so, sorry, I'm kind of like, that's a good question though. That's, yeah.
For sure, for sure. Does anybody have any comments on this topic in closing? We have a few minutes left, and it's been a thorough discussion on some of these issues. It's such a complex issue of the Indigenous experience, and sports is just one aspect of it. But like I said, I'm a teacher and trying to be a principal of trying to figure out the best way we can heal, because a lot of us have, but a lot of us have had trauma and damage, and I always, I mean, I'm not trying to blame, but there's historical reasons why. The state that many of our families are in is not a normal state for Indigenous people. Canada's been 3 years old, and prior to the formation of this country, it could be debated whether it's 10,000 years, 20,000 years, 30,000 years, or since time immemorial that Indigenous people have been here. And by no means am I ever saying that life was easy in this land, but we did okay. We survived in this very harsh climate in this land, and we had our own political structures, our own legal structures, our spiritual structures, and that was damaged with the formation of this beautiful country that we're in. And I'm a very proud Canadian, but we just have to acknowledge the as wealthy as we are, it came at an expense, and our families are striving to get back into our units of health, our families that are healthy, and we're getting there. So, like I said, you three have are inspirations, are inspirational figures for our young people to pursue education or to pursue athletics. We're very proud of you, and maybe we'll have this minute just to say anything in closing to our guests tonight who have come out. Sienna?
I just want to say thanks for bringing about this opportunity, because in my 5 years of university, I've never done anything like this or been a part of anything like this, or have heard of or seen anything like this. So I think if we would have done this a couple years ago, or when I first started and when I was in my first year and I saw something like this, it would have made me feel more comfortable as an Indigenous athlete and student. And yeah, I just want to say thanks for this opportunity, and thank you for coming and listening and being open. And I think that's just kind of what we need more of, is people being open to educating themselves more. and I just want to say in my, I'm taking an Indigenous education class, and a lot of people, because we have lots of discussions after we do the readings or the videos, a lot of people don't know a lot of details and they don't have a lot of knowledge on Indigenous history and, for example, residential schools. And they're actually very surprised by what they learn through just, say, for watching films like We Were Children or Indian Horse. And I think once people do open up and listen and educate themselves through watching stuff like that or reading stuff like that, they can just, I think it will lead them to being more open and, more, I don't know, more open and
They improve things, hey?
Yeah, to, I guess, the Indigenous community. And I think that is what can also create a more inclusive environment everywhere, in every place.
For sure. Miigwech, thank you very much. Trishelle, do you have any closing words for our participants?
I just want to thank everyone for coming. And then maybe, would it be okay if I addressed one question we had in the comments, or?
For sure.
For sure. Okay, so there's an attendee asked if any of the panelists find it hard to make the argument which sports are not inclusive and there are not enough Indigenous people in sports when affirmative action is implemented to ensure a certain number of your people attend university. I feel like this is very important to discuss. Little backhanded in some aspects, I feel, but I feel like I get this a lot. The question comes across of, well, you have it so easy. You get your education, it's free. Like, there's programs to get your people into university, and it's just the idea that it's easy, it's an easy path. It's a light switch turned on by the government, where my grandmother and my great-grandmother were forced and abused in residential school, but now my education's paid for, so I should be happy. So I feel like addressing that question it's a long road. I mean, if you're negligent and, I guess, ignorant to the history of Indigenous people, you would assume that it's easy and you have free education now. Like, there's affirmative action being taken place to make sure your people are in university. But if only it was that simple. If only it was that simple. I mean, there's so much that's not covered that I personally don't. Like, my education is funded, but I do not feel that it is free. I mean, my education is paid for by the abuse my Kushi, my grandmother, went through, that my own Kaw, my grandfather, went through. So just addressing that question, I feel, is so important that we take into consideration the history there.
And those treaty rights where the wealth of Canada came from, treaty rights, and they were shared experience. So that's the thing. But I also have a $1,561 bill that I could share with our friend that not all First Nations people get this education covered. So I can provide you the receipt for that. Riley, do you want to end our conversation or say final words?
Yeah. So, I kind of want to address the last question too, and so it did bring me something about why isn't there enough Indigenous professional athletes in sports? So the real question is, it's a true question, is because I would say Indigenous athletes are really underlooked. Like, for example, like myself, like I'm grateful for where I'm at, and I'm very comfortable, and I don't like to look back on my accomplishments. I just like to look forward. But I'm a world champion. I'm a gold medalist and all that. But it's just like my I don't like to talk about. I don't like to gain fame or notoriety over it. And so it's just like all these corporate companies. I know that I was supposed to be a full-time sponsored athlete, but of course their comments were like, okay. Their assumptions was, okay, he's Indigenous, and I assume he does, what the media portrays, and not only that, but the like you said, the media and all that, and of course you pretty much addressed that. But it's just like obtaining that financial sponsorship, like how I got to where I'm at. I'm very grateful for where I'm at. Like I said, I have a full-time job. I'm doing presentations, and of course there's an honorarium. That's what helps me with my travel and training fees and all that. But it's just like, I know that if it's a non-Aboriginal person, they'll get sponsorship just like in the next, like a full-time sponsorship from a corporation in the next 2 to 3 years. Unlike me, it's been like 5, 6+ years. So I'm still very young, FYI guys. But yeah, like it's a great discussion. I know we haven't gotten any of those answer all those other questions, but I know the 2 other attendees. I know that I don't want to get your guys' name wrong, and so of course, but you guys are amazing what you guys are doing, and keep it up. I know that you guys are inspiring the next generation. You guys inspired me, and then I know Jeff for a couple of years. He was the principal at Sutina School, and yeah, I just hope you guys get something out of this Zoom chat. I know I certainly did, and I know that there's a lot more to discuss, but I hope you guys enjoyed and got something out of this. I just want to say, hope you guys have a good week. And I know that this whole COVID is happening. I know that your guys' mental health isn't doing too well. And so I know that, yeah. Anyways, so hope you guys, yeah.
Awesome, Riley. Thank you, Miigwech. So, yeah, we're a little bit over time, but listen, I want to say thank you, Miigwech, Siaskas, to our panelists, Sienna, Riley, and Trishelle, for sharing your perspective with all of us today. The Dinos Diversity Series will continue 2 weeks from tonight, Tuesday. No, that's from last time, so I'm actually not sure when the next one will be. We'd like to hear what you thought about today's program, so please provide your feedback in our short poll. Austin who's doing tech, will bring up the poll in the Zoom webinars. Perfect. So once again, thank you for joining us tonight. A recording of today's program will be available on the Alumni Month website by the end of the week. Enjoy the rest of the evening. Go watch Trump and Biden go at it. That should be good entertainment. Go Dinos. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you for participating and joining us.